Large-scale social deception. That's the story. And what's fascinating is as Donald Trump is calling out millions of dollars spent on social engineering and large-scale social deception paid to Reuters, a news agency, not a lot of outlets are picking the story up. Surprise, surprise, they probably won't, because the more we learn about the U.S. government spending on media, the more damning everything becomes. So I have questions. I'm sure you do as well. But how deep will the rabbit hole go? Trump posted on Truth Social that Politico and Reuters should give that money back. And of course, we've got shills in the corporate press and I'll try and be light. There are individuals that many question as to whether or not they are actually independent media. But they're saying, don't trust your lying eyes. The Politico payments were just for Premier Pro premium prescriptions. Oh, I'm kidding. But they're saying that it's Politico Pro subscription plans are expensive because, well, it's just better. So what happened? Well, many people have begun taking a look at exactly what Politico Pro actually is. And they're pointing out that it's nothing special. In one viral post linking to a Politico Pro article, they said, do you really believe this is worth $15,000? And it was just like a regular article. It said something like Kennedy is going to get voted in or something like that. Why is it the government is spending thousands of dollars per person to buy these news subscriptions? Well, I got to be honest. It's not necessarily in the big picture about manipulating the public. I know a lot of people want to come out and just say outright, this is everything. No. That's the story we have right here. This tweet from Mario Nawfal, where Elon Musk's, not necessarily just DOGE, but many individuals digging through the public expenditures are noticing these strange, expenditures. Mass social engineering and large-scale deception do exist. But what it looks like with Politico and these other news organizations charging thousands of dollars, it's not too dissimilar, as many have pointed out, from like a company selling a hammer to the DOD for 10 grand. Well, if you want to buy a hammer that's government approved, it's going to cost you $10,000. It's a racket. They are gutting and stealing your money. That's what it's always been. Now, one of my favorite stories from the other day, I got to bring it up again, was the criminal defense lawyer searches on Google 5 times the national average in Washington, D.C. Because I'm willing to bet that there were many people all across the board who have been invoicing the government for a variety of things that were fraudulent. That is to say, someone charging $500 for a hammer probably has no real justification for why their $10 Ace Hardware hammer should be sold for $500. But the reality was the government didn't care where the money came from. The government didn't care that it was your money, and they were going to pay those invoices no matter what. So what happens? Well, these big media outlets offer up government subscriptions knowing that they're going to pay it. Whereas the average person might spend $20 a month, the government was spending $250 to $2,000 for one subscription to a pro service. And it's all fake. It's one big scam. Now, I definitely want to talk to you about the one big scam that we end up seeing. But there is a very interesting question about the DARPA DOD large-scale social engineering program and why Reuters was being paid for it and what this really means. Ladies and gentlemen, media manipulation is the name of the game. I'm not going to mince words, okay? Powerful military interests manipulate social media through sock puppet accounts, what they're called. A sock puppet account, for those that aren't familiar, is, let me explain it like this. One guy creates 50 different accounts, all with different names. Those are called sock puppets. One person controlling each and every one. And how do they do it? Let's say you post something like, the more I listen to this Donald Trump guy, the more I like him. One guy working for an intelligence agency or a private contractor will use 50 different accounts and start replying to you saying, don't support Trump. He's bad. I can't believe you would say this. You're not a fascist, are you? No, man, this ain't it. And then all of a sudden, you're inundated with messages being like, no way, bro, Trump is bad. And it works on people. Weak-willed people. Some people look at what Trump is doing and they're like, I like it. And then someone says, you're a fascist. And they go screw yourself. Don't care. But many people, maybe half, maybe the majority, maybe less than half, I don't know, are swayed by social pressure because we're social beings. So when they run these deep social engineering campaigns to try and convince you to support a war or a conflict or to oppose Trump, that's the name of the game. The only problem was, my friends, with the decentralization that we have been seeing across the board, the sock puppet accounts, the intelligence agencies couldn't compete with the likes of, say, this podcast and many like it. More and more were popping up, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. While they tried to create more sock puppets, fake accounts, and manipulation, it wasn't working. So what did they resort to? Heavy-handed censorship. All that did was create a massive backlash. People were wondering why it was that their favorite podcasts could no longer be displayed. Well, we've got big news on this front. We're going to break down what Trump said, what's really going on, and where this money was going, and what this program is. But before we do, my friends, head over to rumble.com/Timpool. And if you check out the documentaries playlist, you can see we got 2 feature-length documentaries. To be fair, Lawrence Others Infringed may be a little old now that Trump is president, and there's some movements made on 2A, but it does deep dive in the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms, and it is really good. Game of Money by Ben Stewart is a bit more evergreen, breaking down how money operates in this country. These are feature-length documentaries available to Rumble Premium users. So go to timcastpremium.com where you can sign up to become a Rumble Premium member and watch these feature-length documentaries, as well as a ton of other content we have in the works. Now, there's a reason why I love shouting at Rumble. And, well, for one, we did a deal with Rumble, and here we are. Really excited that we're going to have our members-only premium content now on Rumble. If you go to timcast.com, you can join the Discord community, which is a bit different. That's where you can hang out with like-minded individuals and be involved in our public events, which are to come. So, bear with us. We're not quite there yet, but we're working on it. But you can also call into our uncensored members-only show. I want to say this. YouTube, I hope you hear me. 10 years ago, 13 years ago, we saw the rise of video podcasting, largely on accident, but as a component, as a inevitability. Channels like Carl Benjamin's Sargon of Akkad. He started making videos, but they weren't really videos. They were essays. He was talking about ideas. Eventually, YouTube panicked, and they started banning and deranking and hiding this content, this channel being one of them. In the early days, this channel, it was unstoppable, indeed. And now it's doing well. Appreciate you guys watching. But subscriber growth was tremendous. It was massive. It was rapid. And around 2018, the corporate press and various think tanks and NGOs started to lie. In one of these reports, they created something called the Alternative Influencer Network, where they falsely linked individuals to white supremacists and white nationalists. That's what they do. They then used this fake report, laundered through the corporate press, to attack advertisers. Sound familiar? Didn't we learn recently that USAID was funding a coordinated assault on Elon's new X platform to organize an advertiser boycott? Sound familiar? What ended up happening is that somebody who watched one of these videos, you watch a video like this or a live stream, on the recommendations tab, it would say, here's more content from Tim Pool you might like. After this, every single person that was maligned saw the algorithm drop off. No longer was YouTube keeping people on our channels. That's weird, right? I mean, if you guys like watching the Timcast IRL or Timcast News channel, certainly the content they should be recommending is similar content. Well, they stopped doing that for the average person. Started redirecting them to Fox, CNN, and MSNBC, which were not podcasts, more traditional news clips, short form, not long form. And they did it because of political pressure and fear of advertiser boycotts, as well as their own internal politics. I believe this was engineered by special government interests through these mass deception programs. And I'll put it this way. Along with Facebook, YouTube, and other platforms destroyed what was to be the forefront of new media. We are looking at now, my friends, in 2020, the podcast presidency. Donald Trump, he won because of podcasts. They tried to silence us, but it did not work. We were able to prevail. So where are we today? YouTube destroyed their opportunity to control the video podcasting era. It's remarkable. I remember when Carl Benjamin, now of the Lotus Eaters podcast, was on Patreon. Patreon did much the same thing. They banned Carl Benjamin without warning because on some live stream to a small channel in a debate he was having, he used a racial slur to insult what he viewed as racists. And he used the racial slur, ironically, against white people because he was saying, you act the way you describe other people, so your slurs are meaningless. Well, Patreon then said, doesn't matter. He used a slur, and they banned his Patreon account where he was making his money. I talked to Patreon. They made this argument, not necessarily on the Carl Benjamin front, but they said, we've had individuals and Visa and MasterCard come to us and say, if we don't ban him, they'll shut the whole site down. And I said, flex your muscles, bro. Get every major influencer on social media to get cut off at once because they're threatening you and see how quickly they bow down. But they didn't want to play that game. Probably because it wasn't just the payment systems and the payment processors. It was the government. Today, we have something very interesting. Rumble is expanding. The website is getting better. The app works swimmingly, beautifully. And they have a feature where you can turn on a podcast, turn your screen off, put it in your pocket, and listen. Now, I know a lot of apps have that, but that's the important one. As YouTube was destroying itself and getting rid of video podcasting, they're now desperate to play catch up. We're seeing similar things with Spotify. Apple is nowhere to be found. I don't know what Apple's doing. Apple used to own the podcasting space, which is particularly lucrative. Now, YouTube is becoming a major player. Spotify, of course, is a major player. Their stock is at $600 a share? Nuts. In my opinion, I know I'm biased. I do have equity in Rumble, is that Rumble is undervalued in this regard because Rumble emerged as the principal video platform, destroyed video podcasting on its platform. Spotify just adopted it. So I see if this is done right, and I think we can, video podcasting, which is expected to take everything over, that's why I'm saying I'm on the in the long run, I think Rumble is the right player on this one. But back to where we currently are, my friends. The DOD paying for mass social engineering is a major component of this. And as this story deeply involves my industry and the work that I've done, I got a lot of personal stuff to get to. So smash that like button, share this stream with everyone you know. Let's get the word out. Give us a like. Let's say, let's do this. As a joke, I always say 1 like equals 1 deportation. That's where we're currently at. Maybe I spelled it wrong. And send in your Rumble rants and your super chats. We will read those in the back end of the live stream. But let's start with where we're currently at. I know the opening I gave about how I was impacted, how YouTube was banning video podcasts, perhaps a bit esoteric and a bit personal, but it does lend itself directly into what we are seeing and why the government is funding these programs. Mario Nawfal has the tweet, and I got to tell you, I am fascinated to see many corporate news outlets are not reporting this story, which may be one of the most significant stories of our generation. Large-scale social deception funded by our government to media outlets being exposed. I can only imagine that the powers that be and the established big tech structures don't want us talking about it. Mario Nawfal says DOGE investigations reveal mysterious Defense Department payments to Reuters for large-scale social deception project between 2018 and 2022. Very interesting. That was the start of when they began banning our channels, our shows, when we were calling out the lies. While DARPA claims it was for cyber defense, sure. Questions swirl about why a news agency received millions for social engineering. The revelation comes as other media outlets face scrutiny over federal funding. Now, the fascinating thing here, my friends, this is all public. You can look this stuff up. Go to usaspending.gov and you can see all of what they're spending money on. I wonder why it ended in 2022. The awarding agency, the Department of Defense, paid Thomson Reuters Special Services. I believe the amount was around $9 million. I don't know that they have the number listed here in this image. But if we jump over to, I believe it's, here we go. Don Wick on X shows the post. Thomson Reuters Special Services, LLC, for active social engineering defense and large-scale social deception definitive contract. The obligation was $9,147,532. No. Let me pause. Maybe this specific campaign was payment for social engineering in, I don't know, Libya or something. Maybe. We don't know for sure. The point is, your government, for defensive reasons, they call it, is giving millions of dollars to news companies. Now, Reuters, of course, isn't just a news agency. They have a legal services entity as well. So either way, this massive company with a large media component is being given lots of money by the Department of Defense for large-scale social engineering. Can we trust them? If you guys found out that Timcast received $10 million from the Department of Defense for social engineering, would you believe anything I was saying? I mean, I suppose I could still just provide sources and prove it, maybe. But here's where we're at. Back in 2018, 2017, when I'm making videos, one really great example of a massive viral video that I had was when I exposed the Covington kids scandal. Now, I think for the most part, the U.S. government isn't super concerned about a story like that. But what happened was, as most of you know, a young man was standing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial when a Native American man walked up, got in his face, and banged a drum in his face. A small clip went viral. Oddly, someone just took a 15-second clip of this 2-hour-long live stream and then posted it on social media and claimed that this kid did something wrong. What we ended up with was many prominent personalities on the left and the right criticizing this kid, saying this was wrong what this kid did. They were trying to insinuate the kid got in the face of the old guy. That's not what happened. What happened was the old guy walked up into his face. So for me, I saw the video. People said to me, Tim, did you see this video? I can't believe how shockingly offensive it is. Can you believe what this kid did? I said, what is the kid doing? And they're like, look at him with his smirk on his face, getting up in this guy's face. And I said, this is just a video of two people standing in front of each other, bro. Why were there so many people so quick to just state as a fact, this is what happened? I find it to be strange. Well, sure enough, I and many others began digging, and we found that in a 2-hour-long live stream, it was in fact the Native American man who got in that kid's face. These are the kind of videos that I was producing, debunking the mainstream media lies. The corporate press had lied about this kid. He sued all of them, and he won. Now, that story is easy, and it was massively viral, and I use it as an example. However, there are many other stories about, say, whether or not Comey was lying under oath, and it appeared that he may have been. Many stories about, for instance, Burisma and Ukraine. And perhaps when I play videos of Joe Biden saying things like, if you don't fire the prosecutor, you're not getting $1 billion, while it was all true and easily verifiable, you can understand that powerful interests in the government did not want that to be a major narrative. So, large-scale spending on social deception could easily translate itself into ad boycotts, manipulation of the algorithm, and we know for a fact that Twitter, before Elon bought it, was absolutely ideologically driven. We also know, thanks to an expose by not just a conservative outlet, but some liberal outlets, Google staff and executives were crying when Donald Trump won in 2016. Well, Donald Trump is chiming in, my friends, posting, looks like radical left Reuters was paid $9 million by the Department of Defense to study large-scale social deception. Give back the money now. That's not the only post he made. I don't know that I have the other one pulled up, but let's get to the root. He also posted Politico was paid as well, and they should return those funds. Let's before we get into the Politico thing, I want to talk about where this story originates. From our good friend Ron Howard. You remember him? Come on, Happy Days. Real Ron Howard, family man, storysmith, and co-founder of Imagine Entertainment. He's got a lot of movies, right? He says, what do you think about this piece? And it's a Reuters article. Musk's DOGE cuts based more on political ideology than real cost savings so far. Interesting, I say. Elon Musk responded, I wonder how much money Reuters is getting from the government. Let's find out. And thus began the digging. What's fascinating to me, my friends, is that this information was public for so long, but nobody looked into it. We didn't know. How many of you knew you can go to usaspending.gov and start digging into government contracts from the DOD into media outlets? I'm sure a lot of people did, but had we known about this sooner, these stories would have been flying like crazy, especially during the Biden administration. But now that the DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, has begun digging into waste, fraud, and abuse, and it's become the forefront. Now, as I say, out of sight, out of mind, well, the inverse is largely true. Once someone points it out, you can't stop seeing it. Many people then began digging into usaspending.gov, finding these contracts and these expenditures, wondering what they really are. So, my friends, I say this unto all of you. I recommend you all start digging. Go to usaspending.gov, look up any media company, look up big tech, and see where they were spending. Surprisingly, when I looked up YouTube, actually not a lot of money was being funneled in this direction. While they were giving contracts to YouTubers for consulting, they're rather small. 5, 10, 15 grand here. I know 15 grand is a lot of money, but in this 9 million for social engineering is a bit different from giving one guy 15 grand for consulting. I personally, I'll tell you this, I've consulted YouTube to an extent. Google and YouTube 10 years ago had me come to their offices, ask about tech and live streaming and stuff like that, rather innocuous. And I've done events for YouTube specifically on extremism. I got invited once to a YouTube event where they were trying to figure out, and, it's sad, really. They're trying to figure out how to stop the spread of viral pro-jihadi recruitment videos on YouTube that didn't break the rules. They said the problem they had was that people were going onto the platform promoting not necessarily terrorist organizations, but extremist religious philosophies that were being used to recruit for organizations. And they said, we can't just ban them all, because they're just stating an opinion on a religious view. Yeah. Well, they were trying to figure that one out. And that was a bit different. It's not like any money was paid to anybody. These were like parties, to be completely honest, at the YouTube space. And they were like, how do we combat extremism? And I said, stop censoring people. My attitude was like, you want to normalize. I said, making these videos where you claim everybody should go in love and multicultural and stuff, that's not convincing anybody. You need to present the relatability of cultures. And I guess the principal argument was, this multiculturalism stuff doesn't work. You can't take an extremist philosophy, put it on your platform in a Western nation, and then be shocked to find that when you grant free speech to extremists, they use that to recruit. That being said, having small meetings like that is very different from what we see here. Ultimately, with massive amounts of money being poured into all of this. So let's take a look at this Reuters article and what they're talking about with Musk's DOGE cuts being more political than anything else. And then let's talk about how the government is secretly and surreptitiously funneling mass funds into woke and corporate and liberal media outlets. Here we go, my friends. This is the article in question that Ron Howard was just asking about. That's fine, I guess. They write the first phase of the rapid fire effort by Tesla CEO Elon Musk and Trump to cut waste from the government's agencies appears to be driven more by an ideological assault on federal agencies, long hated by conservatives, than a good faith effort to save taxpayer dollars, according to two veteran Republican budget experts. Since Trump's inauguration on January 20th, Musk has dispatched members, blah, blah, blah. We know that. But Douglas Holtz-Eakin, I'm going to pause real quick and say, very interesting that Reuters, which is supposed to be a news outlet, is running an opinion piece. Did they label it as opinion? I always love when they don't. They certainly did not. It's news. It's news, they're saying, that we're running opinion without fact. They go on to say that this guy, Douglas Holtz-Eakin, former Republican director of the CBO, Congressional Budget Office, said the agencies Musk and Trump have targeted to date account for a tiny fraction of the overall federal budget, which is projected to reach $7 trillion this year. Sure, how about I do this? Let's go to the debt clock and take a look at how much money has been saved by DOGE, because Elon Musk has said it's actually fairly accurate. As of right now, we are looking at hundreds of thousands, millions, and billions saved by DOGE. Are we supposed to be upset that $90 billion have been saved? It's not enough. It's a $7 trillion deficit, or I'm sorry, not deficit. It's a $2 billion deficit, and there's $7 trillion in spending. The fascinating thing is, because we actually checked this on Timcast.rl, you can see that U.S. spending is actually slowing down. Though it is massive and going extremely quickly, and the deficit is still increasing. The deficit was actually going up by thousands of dollars before Trump got in. And the hope is to reverse the deficit. Now, let me explain the debt versus the deficit. The deficit is we are spending more than we are bringing in, generating the debt. If we can reverse the deficit, we are then decreasing the amount of debt incurred towards the obvious U.S. national debt, which has to be paid. And right now, the largest line item is the interest on the debt. What does that mean? They're going to tax you more, or the economy will collapse. If we do not reverse this, Trump says, we will be bankrupt. So they say, Elon is ideologically driven as they spend what? Tens of millions and billions of dollars on ridiculous garbage. You know what it is? With a $36 trillion deficit, debt. See, I mix them up too. A $2 trillion deficit and a $36 trillion national debt. These people in D.C. are like, man, who cares? The ship is sinking. The Titanic is going down. Best I can do is extract as much as possible. And, with extracted as much as possible, just get on the life raft and GTFO. And then, of course, leave everybody else hanging. Yeah. Well, I don't know what else you can do other than send in Elon Musk and DOGE and start ripping this thing apart. But of course, they want to blame Elon Musk for being ideologically driven. They say that he pledged $1 trillion in savings through his efforts to identify fraud and waste in government. An online DOGE live tracker claimed on Tuesday the department has saved taxpayers $37.69 billion since it began work on January 20th, but did not provide evidence of how that figure was reached. There's a really great video. Elon actually just posted it that shows all of the posts made by DOGE showing where they are cutting the money and what programs are being shuttered. And then you have this CNN clip where Scott Jennings is like, they're posting it. They're showing what they're cutting and where the money's being saved. And this woman, I don't even know her name. She's like, that's not true. They're not doing that. And he says, well, they are. You just don't want to believe it. That's the reality of where we are at with how the U.S. government is operating. And man, if we keep up this path and we do not solve for the debt and the deficit, we are going to come to a point where you're going to be taxed at 40, 50, 60%. But it's not going to be to build roads. It's not going to be to fight wars even. It's going to be to pay the interest on the debt. Eventually, there will be a default. The interest will not be paid. But let me help you guys understand something, right? I'm not, as chief economist or whatever, but I can tell you these economist guys are largely lying a lot of the time. Let's take a stab at it. These Democrats come out and say, and many of you may have heard me say this, but I'll break it down again for those that are unfamiliar. Many of these people come out and they say that if Trump puts a tariff in place, which he's supposed to do today at 1 p.m., reciprocal tariffs, it's going to cost you more money. That's a lie. If there is a product made in America that costs $10 and it's made overseas for $9, no, let's do this. There's a product in America made for it's sold for $11. And in China, it's sold in the United States for $10. Yeah, people are going to choose to buy the cheaper product. That's the reality of how the world works. So in the U.S., they struggle. They say, how do we compete with Chinese slave labor? It's not easy to do. The U.S. then sees these factories and these plants begin to shutter. So let's say there's an American-made product that's a little bit more expensive, and there's a Chinese-made product that's a little bit cheaper. And so some people say, yeah, but I'd rather buy an American. It's a smaller business. I'll buy from them. Trump puts a tariff on the Chinese-made product, bumping up their costs by 25%. They're not going to raise the price to $12.50 because they won't be able to compete with the American company at $11. So it may go up to $11, and then you have a choice between an American-made and Chinese-made, and guess what? People then just say, I'll go with the American-made stuff. The tariffs are going to put pressure on the market, resulting in the price, the driving force to be these companies, it becomes too expensive to manufacture and import these products, so they will be made in America. And if they're already made in America, market forces will drive the prices down and stop them from being able to raise their prices. Ultimately, the goal is to make it too expensive to run these manufacturing plants overseas. They'll have to move everything to the United States, give Americans the jobs, and these same products from the same companies will be made in America. But here's the issue with the national debt. The first question to ask yourself is, who is owed the money? And a lot of people don't realize this. The national debt is largely owed to American citizens. So how does that work? Oh, man. It's a complicated, broken system, but U.S. spending is across the board, and it's largely spent here in the United States. The U.S. government can take on debt as a means of paying for things. So they raise the debt ceiling. Here's one way it functions. When let's say I need to build a shed. Many of you have. So you call a contractor and say, I want to build a shed in my yard. I need it. We got to put my tools in there. How much it's going to cost? And they say, we can do a nice shed for you. It's going to cost $10,000. Here's how we're going to build it. Here's how big it's going to be. And you go, okay, let me talk with my wife. So you go to your wife and say, it's going to be 10 grand to build this. And she goes, we don't have 10 grand. And he goes, yes, but we do bring in $6,000 every month from my job, which means we'll be able to pay down the debt we owe on that shed over a period of time, as long as we plan it accordingly. So he goes to the contractor and he says, here's what we'll do. I'll give you $2,000 today, and then I'm going to pay you $2,000 a month plus 5% interest, like any other standard loan. The contractor says, deal. The contractor thinks I'm going to get a premium. I'm going to make more money. The problem then is every month, just like any other credit card, the household now has to pay interest, which is lost revenue, lost money. It's just going towards nothing because they wanted to buy something they couldn't afford. This is how America operates. I wouldn't recommend it, but this is what largely what people do. They want to buy products. They want to buy houses. They take on loans. They pay interest. The government does it to an insane scale. Why? Because, my friends, there's seemingly no limit to how much money they can steal from you. So here's the terrifying reality. The U.S. national debt is a real number that is actually owed. And the largest line item right now is the interest on the debt, meaning sooner or later, the contractors, the companies, the producers who have worked deals with the U.S. government will not get paid. And when the U.S. government says we can't pay our debt and they're bankrupt, which they kind of already are, you know what that means? Take a look at any dollar bill. Let me pull up a nice crisp $20 bill. Federal Reserve note, $20. And it says, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. You see that right there on the front of the $20 bill. So backed by the confidence of the U.S. government and nothing else, fiat currency we call it, so long as the government can pay its debts, people believe this $20 is worth something. But what happens when, once again, Congress shows up and says, let's raise the debt ceiling? What does that mean? We're going to cut a bunch of deals with contractors, weapons manufacturers, big tech cybersecurity firms, where we're going to promise to pay them things, and then we'll pay them based on the money we bring in. What happens when the interest becomes so great we can't pay it down? The U.S. will then start printing money. The money supply does expand. And so the system is insane, if you ask me. What's going to end up happening is mass stimulus. They'll just create, upon the issuance of debt and legal tender, $10 trillion and dump it on the system to try and pay down their debt. That will cause hyperinflation, so they have to control against it. What DOGE is doing is extremely important. Certainly, it's uncovering waste, fraud, and abuse, and they're very mad about it. I take a look at what we're seeing, and I tell you this. I have a deep fear, my friends. Ian on Timcast, he likes to say, like, why don't we just default on the debt? Well, because then your dollars are worthless. That dollar being spent overseas is the confidence of the U.S. government that the U.S. government can pay its debts. This money means something. It means oil. But what if it means nothing? Where we are headed now, with interest being the largest line item, this means the U.S. government owes a lot of different people a lot of money. If they default, that means weapons manufacturers, they're going to be laying people off like crazy. It means you're going to see contractors who have worked on government projects not paying their bills. Companies that built roads not getting paid, not paying their staff. It will cause one of the worst depressions we have ever seen. Now, I'm not saying that we should carry on this insane system where the government just finds more and more ways to tax you and take your money or inflate the currency to try and pay down the debt. One strategy to dealing with debt, and I love this, it's so crafty from the U.S. government. Let's say right now, what can $20 buy you? A pizza? You can get a pizza with extra cheese and pepperoni. So basically when I say, if you work for me for 1 hour and I'll give you $20, I'm basically saying you will be able to, after this 1 hour of work, buy yourself a large pepperoni pizza with extra cheese, by the way. It's a good pizza too. I think the pizzas I order are actually like $12, but let's just say you're getting a good one, jumbo size. What the U.S. government does is, after they do this exchange where they say, you gave me $20 worth of labor, I gave you $20 worth of legal tender, they then print money. So when they owe, or I should say, they don't pay you yet, they say, don't worry, we're going to pay you $20. That person thinks I can buy a pizza with that. They then print $20, pay you half. But what happens? Your buying power goes down. One of the strategies of the U.S. government in printing and creating money and inflating currency is that the amount are the people who buy bonds, or the people who buy U.S. dollars, or the people who are holding U.S. debt. The amount they can purchase with that money goes down as inflation goes up. It's a way to not pay someone back what you owe them, right? So let's say you owed someone 10 apples, and you said, here's what I'll do. Each apple's $1, so I'll owe you $10. How does that sound? And they go, great, because they gave you 10 apples. Instead of paying them back the 10 apples they gave you, you double the currency, And then they can only buy 5 apples, but that's their problem. You gave them the $10. You paid your debt back, but now they can't buy crap with it. That's how the U.S. government gets away with not actually paying its debts. But anyway, instead of talking about all the debt stuff, let's go back to how the media is running a scam and how the government is dumping your money into mass manipulation to prop up this decaying and broken system. Look, man, the Titanic is sinking. And I think it's fair to say that if we don't have Elon Musk and DOGE or somebody trying to gut this, going back to the debt clock, to bring the overall deficit down and start reversing our debt, paying it down, if they don't do that, insolvency, bankruptcy, and the collapse of the economy and the American way of life. I actually think for our government and for many of these people, they want it to happen. One of the arguments is that the U.S. is on a collision course for war with China, something they call Thucydides' trap. That when the dominant economic power, which would be the United States, is about to be supplanted by a rising economic power, there's a tendency for war. In the past 500 years, there have been 16 instances of this. In 12 of them, war broke out. The argument that some propose is that powerful Western interests are subservient to China not because they're communists or whatever, but because they'd rather not have war. They like being wealthy, don't want war, and some would say war is not preferable, so the idea is this. Transfer our wealth to Chinese assets, let the U.S. economy crumble so that no war will happen, and then China takes over as the unipolar global power, and you get Chinese communism. Trump says no. But the media certainly seems to be hell-bent on making sure all of this decay happens. Or at the very least, maybe it's not so complicated. Maybe it's just that our system is decaying and the powers that be are corrupt. The system that was built is a system of slush fund garbage for corrupt individuals getting paid by the government with no oversight. And they've ripped the system to shreds to the point where China is about to take over. Take a look at this from Molly Hemingway. She says the Free Press tells its readers they were absolute idiots to have thought there was something wrong with obscenely priced subscriptions for Politico Pro, giving millions in taxpayer funds to a media outlet that regularly runs info ops on behalf of the government. Interesting. It says, beware the internet mob on USAID and everything else. Last week, a scandal broke. The biggest in media history, according to the popular conservative activist Benny Johnson. DOGE has opened the books on USAID and cut off aid to Politico, the popular DC news site. Now that their ill-gotten taxpayer gains were gone, the news site couldn't meet payroll. Conservative media, Elon Musk, and even Trump jumped on the story, with the president repeating the biggest scandal line. But as reporter Isaac Saul writes today in the Free Press, it wasn't a scandal at all. Various government employees had purchased a product called Politico Pro and expensed it to their respective agencies. Someone was wrong on the internet. What's new? Well, Isaac says the story is a cautionary tale that epitomizes everything that is wrong with our current media environment. Okay. Well, first, let me just say, yeah, Benny was wrong. I like Benny. He's a hardworking guy, very successful. He does good stuff. He gets a lot of criticism for a lot of reasons. Everybody should to a certain degree. In this regard, he was incorrect. He said it was the biggest, potentially the biggest in media history, that USAID was giving money to Politico. They were not. $44,000 in funds was expensed to USAID, to Politico. And a lot of people were saying it was the biggest scandal, but it is a big scandal. While it's certainly correct to say USAID was not directly funding the media. And it's important to point out, Politico employees who didn't get paid really likely was a glitch. It happens to a lot of companies. There's payroll errors, and it's happened to us. And then we don't have that many employees, so it's not a big deal when they're like, hey, what happened to payroll? And then we get a message from like accounting saying it's like a banking thing, nothing to do with us. And then a few hours later, it's corrected, and everyone's like, and you forget about it. That's why I was actually surprised the story got reported. Because of the story, however, people began to question whether or not the government was funding Politico, and with USAID getting gutted, was Politico going to evaporate? I will point out, my friends, I work in the media space. Timcast, we get more views than Politico does per month. We certainly do. And I just want to stress, it's very strange how their revenue is, 9 figures? Is that what it is? 9? Wow. I'm bad at this. I thought I was kind of good at it. You know, a lot of people like to point out that for our size at Timcast, we do make a lot of money. We do well. We have a lot of employees. We do a lot of crazy things. And I want to stress this to all of you guys as well. Our mission, our ethos here at Timcast, with the deal we're working on with Rumble, none of this is so that I can buy myself a big house. My house is like 1,300 square feet. I think it's smaller than that. I don't like living in big houses. That's just not me. I like lots of land. I like big open spaces with trees. It's actually kind of cheap to get when you live out in the middle of nowhere. The purpose of the mission and what we do at Timcast, as we do make a good amount of money, is to invest in community, culture, and expanding. That's why we're producing documentaries. It's why we have the Green Room Show, the Uncensored Show, and it's also why we have the Discord community, tens of thousands of people talking, building culture, and it's why we're launching Cast with franchises. Certainly, I could hire a team and start setting up our own coffee shops where we own all of it. But that was never the mission. The mission was to have decentralized community spaces where you can sip a cup of coffee, because it's founding fathers who met in bars and pubs to formulate the revolution. And so I want to have everybody be involved in it. I don't need to be the big boss CEO of this massive corporate chain or anything like that. What we're working on with the revenue we generate is to build culture and expand. And that's what I think we're doing. But then I take a look at Politico and I'm like, man, they get less views than we do, but they make way more money. Well, to be fair, they have a newsletter, which is decently large, and they charge a lot of money for it. The Politico Pro sponsorships subscriptions they sell are actually not that much of their revenue. I think it comes out to like 4 or 5% per year, but still substantial. I'll tell you why. If your overhead, so let me put it like this. We here at Timcast, we try to put as much of the money as we can into growth, development, investing. We have a lot of employees, a lot of contractors. West Virginia's given us the business, but the reason is I could certainly just put that money aside and say, look at our massive margins and profit. Tim Pool's going to buy himself a Ferrari. I don't know what I would do with a Ferrari. I don't like driving as it is. I don't mind driving, but, I got a Cybertruck, I guess. I got a Honda Accord. Honda Accord's a nice car. And, the company and I, don't get me wrong, I'm well off. But what I want is to see cultural victories. If I was going to buy something, it's going to be buying winning the culture war, so that I know we're going to go to Mars, we're going to build new technology, build new spaceships, all of those really cool things, so that humanity becomes better than it was yesterday. But we need responsibility, meritocracy, and good moral traditions. That's what I would buy. If I woke up in the morning and they said, sir, you've won $1 million in the lottery, I'd say, how can I use that money to expand what is morally right? How can I use this money to make America more honorable? That's not buying gold-plated steaks at Nusret, despite the fact the Nusret restaurants are amazing, by the way. I don't buy the gold-flaked food. That's just silly. It's about building something that makes America great, makes this world better and humans better. But here's what's the important thing to understand. If all of the money from Politico is being spent on infrastructure and overhead and covering the cost of investment and paying their investors, a $1 million payment from the government could be $1 million kickback for one person. DOGE came out and said, we want to kick back $740 million to the American people. They said this money was being wasted. Let's refund it. And the liberals and the woke and the progressive responded with, here's the meme. You give away consumer protections. We give you $2 because $740 million broken up is each American getting $2. So it's like that $2 ain't really that much money, right? But $740 million for one agency is. So think about what that means to a media agency that's getting an $8 million payment, or it's $1 million a year from the U.S. government. Certainly they say, we make $200 million. What do I care? And what happens if their margins are 3%? And one of the executives cutting this deal with the government for $2,000 subscriptions, sometimes upwards of $15,000, says the $1 million goes right in my pocket. We can claim it's marginal relative to the total revenue we generate, but for a single individual who gets that kickback, that's money in the pocket. And then, would that individual who runs the company want to badmouth the government and call out these payments? No, because it's him benefiting personally, or her. We're progressive here, right? The Federalist reports, Politico Pro's exorbitant price tag shows it's not a subscription, it's a swamp patronage. I completely agree. In one hilariously viral post, someone said, do you really think that this article warrants $15,000? And it was literally just like a regular old article you could have read on, I don't know, like on News Nation or CNN. Why spend the money? Because they don't care that it's your money. They seemingly have bottomless coffers. And it props up a media apparatus that favors the bloat and the corruption. Now let's talk about the decay of the media manipulation machine. We have this story from Zero Hedge. Microsoft drops USAID-funded NewsGuard after Ted Cruz starts digging. Interesting. NewsGuard was accused of receiving funds from DOD courtesy of USAID. Let me read the story and see what they say. Now, I want to talk about NewsGuard because I long used them. And I said, let's use their tool against them. It didn't work. Maybe I was a bit naive, but this is a hilarious tale. NewsGuard, for those that don't know, is worthless. We stopped using it a long time ago. And the reason is it's because they lie. NewsGuard publishes fake news and manipulations to lie about people and organizations. And they did it to us. NewsGuard is a browser extension that you can install on Chrome or Brave that will give you a rating as to whether or not you can trust the news agency. The problem is the New York Times can't be wrong, and everyone else has to adhere to what the New York Times says. Otherwise, they're wrong. And if the New York Times doesn't report it, then you're wrong. So eventually I was just like, NewsGuard isn't actually doing any kind of real rating. It's completely fake. The New York Times gets things wrong all the time. Politico gets things wrong all the time. The way NewsGuard operated was they would go to the corporate press and say, if the New York Times says it, it's true. And then we'll go to any other news outlet and check their article against the New York Times, ABC, CNN, etc. And if they don't adhere to it, we'll call them fake news. Well, Microsoft was giving them funding. But now the story is they've been dropped. The move came after Senator Ted Cruz began investigating Microsoft for funding the online media literacy censorship tool created by NewsGuard to help guide learners of all ages through the overwhelming landscape of online news and information. Now we come to find out that NewsGuard was funded by USAID. In response to Cruz, Microsoft claims their support of NewsGuard was limited to a one-time donation in 2018 and said it had asked NewsGuard to remove a claim on its website that read Newsguard's media literacy programs are made possible thanks to generous support from Microsoft. Newsmax reports citing a Senate Commerce Committee spokesperson. The way I viewed it was, we can see this here. Take a look at this tweet from Alan Bakari. Here's what we did. And it basically was the test for what NewsGuard was. Timcast.com once had a news team. We don't anymore. We do have journalists. Follow at Timcast News on X, where we do have reporters digging up viral videos and actually doing on-the-ground reporting. But I said this. Here's what we're going to do. I am going to only use NewsGuard certified sources, and only in rare occasions where we can prove something is true that comes as original source from a non-certified source. This was effectively an attempt at throwing it back in their face. And I do think it was principally effective to a certain degree. The argument was every single time I would do a video like this, you would see every article I had the beautiful green check mark. So if someone claimed I was making up fake news, I'd say, NewsGuard certified. For instance, Star Tribune in Minnesota once wrote an article saying that Ilhan Omar may have married her brother. And when Media Matters took a screenshot and claimed I was lying, the funny thing is, I was just reading a NewsGuard certified source. That was kind of the play there. I could report things that were true, and it was using a source that was certified by NewsGuard. NewsGuard, however, actually wrote that this is really funny. When they reached out to us at Timcast and said, you said this thing was wrong. It was something about, I can't remember, Burisma scandal. And my response was, that's strange. The source for that information is two NewsGuard certified sources, the Daily Mail and New York Post. Oopsie daisy. And I said, so you tell me, if I can't trust the New York Post and the Daily Mail, which you certified as correct, and now you're claiming that information is wrong, you're contradicting yourselves, and your tool is worthless. Uh-oh. Oh boy, were they in trouble. You see, the problem was they were trying to control narrative. And if they said the New York Times was correct, but sometimes the New York Times does report true information. They tend to, actually. I think it's the New York Times, I'd give like a 60%. A lot of fake news on there. But if I pull a story that says, yeah, actually, for instance, one article was a court ruled in Ukraine that they did interfere in the 2016 election, and the New York Times reported that. They claimed I was wrong and said that's fake news. My response, actually, my source is the New York Times, and you certified them. So if I'm using your tool to determine what is likely true, and then you're coming back and telling me I'm wrong, why would I use NewsGuard? Oopsie daisy. Well, as it turns out, I guess, it was politically motivated and funded by USAID. The whole thing was a manipulation game. We stopped using it a year or so ago or 2 years ago because the problem was they didn't care. NewsGuard proved themselves to be completely worthless, but would just claim that the news sources they certified were false when it didn't adhere to a narrative. And then I said, okay. The funny thing is, when they were trying to certify Timcast.com, they had to issue like 4 or 5 corrections because the whole thing was so incorrect. It was wild. Provably incorrect. They didn't even do fact checking. What a trash organization. Sad. Where we're currently at today, my friends, is, that's interesting. Donald Trump says, why was Politico paid millions of dollars for nothing? Buying the press? Pay back the money to the taxpayers. How much has the failing New York Times been paid? Is this the money that is keeping it open? They are buying the press. Well, no. The New York Times and Politico don't get most of their money from these subscriptions. Certainly, though, we did do the digging and found that, heavens me, they are dumping a ton of money in these exorbitant subscriptions the government employees are paying for no reason. But it's the same as buying a hammer for $500, which we know they do. In some instances, it's massive social engineering, which is very strange. Where's that tweet? Here we go. Active social engineering defense and large-scale social deception. I don't trust these people. Not one bit. And I know most of you don't either. But my friends, it's no surprise that Americans' trust in media remains at an all-time low. Because we've woken up to it. These people are evil. They are liars, manipulators, cheaters, and thieves. And the deepest level of hell is reserved for the betrayers, the mutineers, and the disloyal. These individuals in American media have betrayed the American people. They lie to them on a regular basis for cash and for political power because it makes them feel good. These corporations and the government prey upon the narcissistic sociopaths by offering them fame and fortune. It used to be that, not always, but quite a bit, you were working in media, it was a largely thankless job. It was a lot of hard work. But millennials want to be famous. That's why TikTok is so popular. This is why so many women are quitting their jobs to go join OnlyFans. People want to be famous. They want attention. And getting a job in the media was a path towards being famous, which is insane. But that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to be Woodward and Bernstein and break open Watergate or whatever, They wanted to have their names on an article that went viral. So they built a world where instead of reporting facts, they just tried to generate as many clicks as possible. And thus, you ended up with a corrupt media, easily funded, manipulated, and broken. It's a great tool for the CIA. Mockingbird. That was, I believe it was Mockingbird, where they infiltrated the press and in some instances, even to this day, were writing articles for journalists to publish on their bylines. How about that? So, my friends, where we currently are in this country is a good place. Trump is gutting, ripping it apart, and they're freaking out. Now, the challenge, I suppose, is, are we going to build the infrastructure in these next 2 years to maintain what we have? A question that came up yesterday on Timcast IRL was, why is Trump going after USAID in these departments when Americans have more pressing issues like the cost of food and illegal immigration? It's actually quite simple. If Donald Trump does not gut their resources, the deep state will strike back. The administrative state will impeach him and it will stop all efforts to save this country. So the most important thing that Donald Trump can do right now is to gut USAID and this insane spending on the corporate woke press, ripping apart the lies and the machine, going scorched earth as Donald Trump marches to the sea on the deep state, so they cannot muster up a counterstrike, get him removed in 2 years, not even in 2 years. Loses the election, they'll move to impeach the moment they get in just shy of 2 years. January 3rd in the new Congress, they're just going to be like, and we impeach. And they're going to do everything they can to subpoena, disrupt. But if Trump can stop the machine and their resources, then we get more than just 4 years of Trump. We get this country back. So I'm going to grab your super chats and some Rumble rants. Smash the like button, share the show with everyone you know. Subscribe if you have not. Sharing is caring, my friends. Podcasts spread through word of mouth. So if everybody watching this right now took the link to this stream and posted on their social media feeds, told their friends to watch it, downloaded the Rumble app or the Timcast app, and shared it, then show would be a lot bigger, and we would be dominating that space. You know, the one thing I'll say about about working with Rumble and being a part of the Rumble premium platform is that we want to build culture and a sphere of influence. So this goes hand in hand with the mission that we've had here for a long time. We want to make shows, documentaries, movies, etc. We want to build culture so that we can inspire a generation. Joining up with Rumble Premium, you now have a massive shared space. The Rumble Archipelago with Dan Bongino, with Steven Crowder, with me, with Ruben, with all these other, with Russell Brand. So the individuals who watch each and every one of those channels now have the ability to see each and every other person's content, creating a larger hub of social influence and culture building. And the best part is we all own the islands we're on, but we've teamed up so that we can make sure more people are getting access and more people are in the sphere of influence of good moral judgment, moral tradition, and expanding cultural influence. We don't have our own cable network channel, but this is something that's big. More people need to launch their podcasts on Rumble, and then we will see Rumble take over. I believe Rumble's undervalued. It's part of why I wanted the deal. It's part of why I have equity in Rumble. I believe it's largely undervalued for what it is and what it's going to be. And that is, has anybody realized that Spotify is trying to do video? I know Spotify's big with music. It's a big platform, but they're trying as hard as they can to get into the video space. Rumble is that already. So kind of seems like Rumble is undervalued. That's just me. Don't take financial advice from that. That's not what I'm saying, though. But let me grab some of your super chats before we wrap things up. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Go to timcastpremium.com to join Rumble Premium. Get $10 off your annual subscription and watch all of our premium content, including our documentaries. And, of course, timcast.com to join our Discord community where tens of thousands of people are building culture. And that's where you can meet people. People are making video games. They're meeting. It's really, really amazing. And a little early, but it'll be a lot easier to explain once we launch Culture War on-the-ground public events, which we're hoping will be soon. It is a bit tough because I'm going to have a kid in a few weeks. So that basically means, like, at any moment, I will run at the door and you'll be like, why is there no show today? And I'm not going to have my phone or I'm not going to be able to post because I'm going to be dealing with family stuff. So that is what it is. Well, let's grab some of your super chats and some Rumble rants. All right. Mr. Cobra says, love that they are finding fraud, but I want prosecutions. Who authorized these transactions deserve jail time. Indeed. Indeed. The challenge is, if it's not codified as illegal and they're given authorization to do it, I don't think we can just lock them up. We can look for fraud, though. If the DOD is funding social engineering, then we can just call that untoward and a misuse of funds. But when people submit false invoices, fraud, those people go to jail. All right. Let's see. Fuck Wolf says, new Dallas police chief says he'll only deport those who have warrants. Time to start cranking out the warrants, my friends. The text vet says, how is anyone surprised the government is pushing propaganda when Obama repealed the law banning the use in the U.S.? What else would happen? Time to ban it again and get government out of media. But I do want to stress to all of you that just because Obama made it legal doesn't mean they weren't already doing it. I do see someone on Rumble Rants Amateur saying the Epstein list has been released. I don't know that that's true. I'll have to look into it. Very interesting. Very interesting. We will see. And if it is, I'll certainly have a segment up for you in a little bit. We've got segments coming up at noon, 1, 3, and 4. We will have segments on Friday. AI Taylor says, serious question. Will Tim Pool's child come out wearing a beanie? No, but we were gifted very many baby beanies. A lot of people, it's funny. Humans are alarmingly similar. So with all due respect, we respect it. But a lot of people have come out when they come on the show. They're like, we bought a present for you. And it's a little beanie for the baby. And it's just like, thank you very much. I really do appreciate the thought and the effort. But just so you guys know, we'll add it to the pile of 30 other beanies for the baby. But I do appreciate it. I do appreciate the sentiment. Free Men Die Free says, Reuters is part of the Trusted News Initiative, an international cartel of news media, technology corps, and social media platforms. They're part of the World Economic Forum's public-private partnerships. Indeed, my friends, indeed. Free Men Die Free adds, with the reveals from DOGE, it's time for a planned day of tax withdrawal or a bank jog. It's time for Uncle Sam to FAFO. They're robber barons and possess no legitimacy. A lot of people always call for tax protests and stuff like this. I don't think it'll work. Too many people don't know, don't care, and tax payments are automated. That's why you get a refund. So maybe you're saying like a business shouldn't pay its taxes, but it's minimal. Most of the tax revenue is automated, and employers aren't going to join you in this. All right. Charles Salmon says, you're telling me that a program offering unlimited free money was abused? I'm shocked. But our politicians are so honest and decent people. Ask them. Indeed, my friends. Well, your baby beanie is not original, LOL. No, I mean, it is original to the people, but it's just everybody thinks similarly. My friends, smash that like button, share the show with everyone you know. Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 11, we're doing the morning live. And I'll just give you the quick rundown. I was trying to do 10 to noon for 2 hours and then break out segments from that live stream as segments. Didn't work because people already watched the full show and then didn't want to watch the other segments. While this did result in a higher total viewership for the morning show, which is good, I could go to advertisers and say, we get 350 or 400, I think it's like 400,000 views on this podcast in the morning. Ultimately, however, with the segments getting lesser views, the total views for the day were down. And so the way, like, it basically negatively impacted the channel in not good ways. So the solution is 1 hour at 10 a.m., followed by 4 independent segments, and the views have been fantastic. And that's a good way to balance doing the live show as well as having bonus segments, and then being able to we're getting into the ad sales portion. It's funny, everybody sells ads, literally everyone except us, and that's why everybody was begging to work with us. They're like, Tim, you're leaving millions of dollars on the table, and I'm like, hey man, I'm an ideologically driven purist of trying to win a moral battle. But we do realize that if we do not get competitive and actually do ads like everybody else, we're not going to be able to invest in the things we want. I want to do films. I want to do shows. We want to build culture and do documentaries, and we need money for that. And so either we sign up 100,000 paying members to Rumble Premium, timcastpremium.com, and to timcast.com, which is not likely, or we sell ads on top and balance between the two to make money to allow us to be competitive and stop the corporate press from destroying our country. So, my friends, that's the plan. I'm going to leave it there. Smash the like button. Share the show with everyone you know. Thank you all so much for being members. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Once again, thank you for hanging out. Segments are coming up at noon is the next one. Thanks, and we'll see you all then.